It was the evening of December 13th, 2020, and the fall semester at Texas State University was drawing to a close. Students were packing bags, saying their farewells, and heading home for winter break. Among them was 21-year-old Jason David Landry, a hopeful, philosophical student with a laid-back demeanor and a deep love for music and his faith. Jason had just completed his final exams and was eager to return to his family home in Missouri City, Texas, to spend the holidays with his loved ones. Jason left his San Marcos apartment around 11:30 p.m. He packed his things, including his guitar, a backpack, and his wallet, and began the roughly 2.5-hour journey along Highway 21. The road ahead was quiet, rural, and dark, winding through the small town of Luling, Texas. But somewhere along that lonely stretch of highway, Jason David Landry vanished.
Every year since Jason's disappearance, his family and friends gather for a candlelight vigil to pray for answers at the site of his
Around
car crash.
12:30 a.m. on December 14th, a volunteer firefighter driving along Salt Flat Road, a rural gravel path outside Luling, came upon a puzzling scene. A light-colored Nissan Altima, Jason's car, was found crashed into a tree. The car was unlocked, the keys still in the ignition, and the lights were left on. Jason's belongings were scattered nearby. His wallet, cell phone, backpack, and even his clothes were found strewn in the roadway and brush, some neatly placed, others seemingly tossed. Oddly, Jason's scent trail, traced by tracking dogs, indicated that after the crash he may have walked down the road barefoot for nearly 900 feet before the trail ended suddenly. There was no sign of struggle, no clear evidence of foul play, but just as haunting, no sign of Jason.
Justin McInnes is president and CEO of Texas Search and Rescue. The group's been instrumental in the search for Jason Landry.
Law enforcement agencies, search and rescue teams, volunteers, and family members quickly mobilized. Helicopters circled overhead. Drones scanned the vast open countryside. Cadaver dogs, divers, and hundreds of volunteers combed the area in freezing temperatures for weeks. Despite their efforts, not a single confirmed clue surfaced. Investigators noted the strange nature of the crash. There were no skid marks, no indications that Jason tried to stop the car. And why was he on Salt Flat Road at all? It wasn't the typical route home. Some theorized he may have taken a wrong turn while using a navigation app. Others questioned whether he was disoriented, possibly under the influence, or suffering a mental health crisis. But these were only theories, none supported by hard evidence. As weeks turned into months, speculation grew. Some believed Jason may have wandered into the woods and succumbed to the elements. Others suspected foul play or even abduction. There were whispers of possible human trafficking and of a shadowy vehicle seen in the area, but no leads panned out. His family held firm to the belief that Jason didn't simply vanish of his own will. Something had happened to him.
Investigators say this is still an active missing persons case. Tonight, Jason Landry's father told us it's been a difficult day, but he is grateful for the people gathering in support of the search.
His father, Kent Landry, a former police officer and attorney, became the public face of the search. With heartbreaking determination, Kent launched social media campaigns, hired private investigators, and pressed law enforcement for renewed efforts. Years later, the mystery of Jason David Landry still haunts the small town of Luling and the wider Texas community. His disappearance left behind a trail of questions.
He got out of his car and took off his clothes. They later found his belongings in the roadway, along with a backpack and a small amount of marijuana. His keys were still in the ignition and cell phone in the car. But after a year of extensive searches, Captain Fury tells KHU-11 they have no evidence Landry is still alive.
A grieving family and a map dotted with the places he might have walked, now woven into the landscape of unspoken stories. No remains have been found. No final message has surfaced. Just echoes, a crashed car on a rural road, a quiet December night, and a son who never made it home. Jason's case remains open. His parents continue to search for answers, refusing to let his story fade into the archives of unsolved mysteries. Candlelight vigils are held, prayers are whispered, and hope, however fragile, still burns. If you have any information about Jason David Landry's disappearance, contact the Caldwell County Sheriff's Office or Texas EquiSearch.
Every big family gathering, you look around the room, Jason's not part of it, and you don't have the the closure that you need, that you need, that you need, that you need, that you need.
Spanish Fork, Utah, a quiet, sun-drenched town framed by windmills, beautiful mountains, and saturated with community pride. But on May 2nd, 1995, the peaceful routine of this place was shattered by an enduring mystery: the sudden, unexplained disappearance of 15-year-old Kiplyn Davis. She reportedly had a brief argument with her parents that morning, a small, seemingly forgettable teenage moment. But for the rest of her life, it would weigh heavily on her family. By early afternoon, Kiplyn was seen at school. She attended her morning classes, talked with classmates, and even left behind her belongings in her locker. Then, she was gone.
On May 2nd, 1995, Kiplyn Davis went missing from here in Spanish Fork. She went to school and never came home. Even 29 years later, her family just wants to find her.
She did not show up for lunch. She did not attend her fourth period drama class. And she never boarded the school bus home. It was as though Kiplyn had simply evaporated between classes. Police were initially slow to act, thinking she had run away. But those closest to Kiplyn insisted she would never do that. She didn't take any clothes. She left her makeup. She didn't even take her purse or school books. And perhaps most chilling of all, her voice was never heard again.
Despite extensive searches and numerous interviews, Kiplyn was never found. Investigators quickly ruled out the theory that she ran away. Her disappearance sparked fear and sorrow throughout the tight-knit community.
Whispers circulated quickly around the small town. Students reported seeing Kiplyn talking to classmates between classes. Some said she had asked for a ride. Others said she had planned to meet someone. But no one came forward with solid information. The high school, tight-knit and familiar, suddenly felt like a place full of secrets. Investigators believed Kiplyn had been murdered the same day she disappeared. But no body was ever found. No murder weapon, no direct witnesses, just silence.
15-year-old Kiplyn went missing some 14 years ago, and tonight her family told me that they believe that she was murdered. They haven't found Kiplyn's body, and Richard Davis says until they do, the pain endures.
Years passed. Friendships cracked. Fear turned into guilt. A decade later, a break came, but it was not the kind anyone had hoped for. In 2009, Timmy Brent Olson, a former classmate, pleaded guilty to manslaughter in Kiplyn's death. He admitted he was there when she died, but claimed he did not kill her himself. He refused to name others who may have been involved and insisted he did not know where her body was buried. 4 other men were charged with perjury, accused of lying to a grand jury investigating the case. Spanish Fork High School classmates who, perhaps out of fear or loyalty, had held their silence for years. Still, no one has revealed the full truth of what happened to Kiplyn.
During his sentencing, Olson stated that he saw Kiplyn Davis after school on the day she disappeared. Olson was finally charged with manslaughter in connection with a long-standing missing persons case that has haunted the community for nearly 3 decades.
The town of Spanish Fork has never forgotten Kiplyn Davis. Her name lingers in classrooms, her face etched into billboards and posters. A redhead with a fierce smile who vanished in broad daylight, surrounded by people who may still know more than they're willing to say. Her parents, especially her father, Richard Davis, became tireless advocates, pushing for justice, raising awareness for missing children, and demanding that the truth come out.
Whoever has Susan needs to come forward. They need to come forward because they don't understand how important and how tragic this is to the family.
Yet decades later, the one thing they've always wanted, to bring their daughter home, remains tragically out of reach. If you have any information, no matter how small, about Kiplyn's disappearance, please reach out to the Spanish Fork Police Department.
We feel so happy for families when they're able to find their daughter or missing child, and you know, life will never be the same, but they're over that part of it, 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 part of it.
It was the night of May 14th, 2008, in western Minnesota, and Brandon Victor Swanson, a 19-year-old student at Minnesota West Community and Technical College, was driving home after celebrating the end of spring semester with friends. His destination, Marshall, Minnesota, where his family waited. but Brandon never arrived.
Good evening. Tonight, we turn our attention to a chilling mystery that continues to haunt the heart of Minnesota. It's been over 17 years since 19-year-old Brandon Swanson vanished without a trace.
Around 1:54 a.m., he called his parents. His voice was calm, but urgent. He had driven his Chevrolet Lumina into a ditch, and though he was uninjured, he couldn't move the car. He told them he was near Lind, a small town south of Marshall. His parents, Brian and Annette Swanson, got in their truck and began driving toward him, staying on the phone the entire time. But something was wrong. They couldn't find him. Brandon assured them he saw lights in the distance. He thought they were from Lind, and began walking toward them. He told his father to meet him at the lights. They stayed on the phone for 47 minutes, Brandon updating them as he walked. Then suddenly, oh shh, and the call dropped. It was the last time anyone heard from him.
To this day, Brandon's case remains open with no evidence of foul play and no confirmed sightings. It's a mystery that gnaws at a community and a family that just wants answers.
Despite extensive ground searches, no trace of Brandon has ever been found. Investigators later determined he was nowhere near Lind, but actually near Taunton, 25 miles away. His car was found off Highway 68, perfectly functional, just stuck in a ditch. Bloodhounds tracked his scent for nearly 3 miles, along gravel roads, into fields, and then to the edge of the Yellow Medicine River, where it abruptly vanished. Some believe he fell into the river. Others think he may have encountered someone, or something, that night. There were no signs of foul play, but also no signs of a simple accident.
As long as Brandon was on the phone, as long as he was talking, as long as we had contact, it was okay. We would be okay. But the minute that that call dropped, I just became sick. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was very, very bad. And just could hardly fathom, what was happening at that point.
Brandon's disappearance became the driving force behind Brandon's Law, passed in Minnesota in 2009, requiring authorities to begin investigating missing adults immediately, not just wait the typical 24 to 48 hours. To this day, no remains, no clothing, no phone, no answers. Brandon Victor Swanson vanished without a trace, and his last words still echo in the darkness of that lonely Minnesota highway. If you have any information about the disappearance of Brandon Victor Swanson, you should contact the Lyon County Sheriff's Office.
I'm thinking that he still had the phone, that it was very near him, that he could pick it up, he'd hear our voice, and we call out to him several times, and we realized, he's not there. He's not there. He's not there.